Three, two, one. You're listening to The Pocket.
There you go.
That's what we
Oh, see, now we got a theme.
What's up,
See?
guys?
That's why we have Nate Brown.
Hi,
That's-
friends.
there's
Am I
the answer.
yelling? Am I yelling into this? There. That's better. What's up?
Nathan, welcome to The Pocket, brother.
It's good to be back in the pocket. It's been a long time. It's been a pretty dormant pocket.
Word.
Yeah.
Has the pocket's been
Man.
quiet for a little while.
I was talking with our good friend Charles Owens the other day, a couple of days ago. He just reached out to see how I was doing because he knew that I was pretty ill. And we were talking about pocket and how nice it is to be able to serve up a little pocket sometimes.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Dude, do you want to know why I wanted to call this show The Pocket?
Why?
I mean, outside of that The Pocket's a great name.
Yeah, that's a great name.
Part of like Steve and I were talking about this last week and like kind of what being in the band again is like. And for me, it's like kind of rematrixing old experiences. And I remember, do you remember that there was a t-shirt design back in the day that was just a hi-hat and it was going to be called The Pocket? Do you remember that, Nate?
Not really.
Nope.
Okay, yeah. So I remember being in the office and like it was like this shirt, and it's gonna be, and Slankard was there and Randy was there, and it's like, yeah, it's gonna be like, because it's like the bass, the rhythm section and like the pocket. And I was like such a jerk. And I was like, what, it's the rhythm section, it's not the whole band. And it was like Dave was like, great, thanks, man. And it was like totally like that idea was just like I totally skunked that idea. And it's like one of those moments I look back on when I'm just like, bro.
Hey man, it was a good call. I mean, like what?
No, it would have been a great t-shirt.
Did Dave come up with the drawing or something?
I don't know, but like I was just
yeah,
lead singer itis,
No,
like...
it's a good call. Nobody knows what you're talking about anyway. By the way, friends, pocket. Oh man.
No, but that's like, but it's a great name, what I was thinking about that, because like so much of what our band was about was that groove, right? And that shirt was going to be a celebration of that. So here, 20 years later, we get to celebrate The Pocket.
Amen. And I got to say, though, for the record, that in some of those early recordings, although the pocket might have been what we were going for, there was a hole in that pocket. I was listening to Play the other day. The songs are great, man, but golly, I remember getting an email from one of y'all's instructors at JMU, and he was just dissing. He was like, I don't know what you guys think you're doing, but do you guys remember that?
Yeah,
we got a very nasty email or whatever it was back in the day from one of the professors who was like really high on himself, and he was like really like flawless. And here we are in the JMU studio breaking it in. I think we were the first people to actually record in there, working out all the kinks, and likewise trying to play to a click track for the first time in our lives. And it was terrible.
Yeah.
But the songs were good. And so like the vibe was there and everything, but there wasn't much pocket going on.
That it's a lot of energy, right?
Oh, great energy. Yeah.
Maybe a little too much of great energy.
Yeah, it was all over the place.
Yeah,
I loved it. Still love it. So yeah, man, welcome back. It's great.
It's a great segue too, because we talked in the last one, the last pocket. We talked with Michael Allenby, and he talked about being an everything fan, and the first time that he heard, was it Solid, I think was the first thing that he heard.
It was Play.
It was Play. Okay. So, and the first thing we were like, all right, well, so like, walk us through your experience. And he was like, the first thing as a drummer listening to it, the first thing I heard was Nate Brown, and that was always the thing, and it's nice to have you here, my brother.
Hey, right on. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Word.
Michael Allenby. I look forward to seeing you, and congratulations on having a child. It's
I
great.
think it's time for a plug. Festi, June 5th. We are playing
Where?
a concert, and it's in Charlottesville, and it's appropriate and safe for people to come, and they have pods, and it's kind of like being in the VIP section at the concert of a band that you really like. And for those that cannot make it to the show in the VIP section, then we also have a live stream. And I think I saw an email this week that said something about an interactive Zoom as well. So we're, as always, we're trying to mix it up a little bit and see what happens. So
That's great, man.
there's some exciting stuff. So check out the links and the stuff on the social medias, and you can quickly find what's going on.
Nate, yeah. So we talked with Allenby, and there's going to be screens with people watching the show. And the best part is like we told them that we want people just to bring their percussion, and they'll just be doing auxiliary percussion over Zoom with you, bro.
Yeah. You know, latency and everything included. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. What was that joke we used to talk about, the hippie with the cowbell? I can't even remember half the things we used to laugh about, but that sort of comes to mind. Like, oh man,
the good times.
Steve, hey, Nate, are you having a hard time hearing Steve at all? Does he sound kind of low volume?
Am I quiet?
No.
You're a little okay.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think running it through the external, the Focusrite is it just adds one more layer of technology that,
Ooh.
Sometimes that's good.
Get your producer hat on, bro. Turn
All
it
right,
up.
so do we need to talk about anything else specifically, or should we jump into some questions sent to us by a listener?
I have a question.
Oh, okay. What's your question?
A couple seconds ago, I saw you taking a slurp of something. What you got in that cup, bro?
Oh, okay. So let me tell you about what I got in my mason jar here. I got a little bit of this handcrafted root beer, plus a little bit of George Dickel sipping whiskey, and a little bit, like I had a little bit of coffee left over, and so I was just like, well, I'll just add a little kick to it, and so that's what I've got. It's good, man. It takes the sweetness out of it,
So when you say handmade ginger or root beer, tell me about that. Yeah,
root beer, a little sarsaparilla.
Oh, I likes that.
Yeah, man, it's good.
That sounds good.
It is good. What are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking what I'm always drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Some everything water.
Some high quality H2O.
This is some high quality H2O. And check this out for all y'all Yeti fans out there. I saved up and bought this. This is my favorite part. Watch this. No more losing the cap, dude.
No cap. Craig?
That's right. That is a righteous.
That's some high quality H2O.
I have some high quality H2O in our made in glasses that it's a company out of Austin. So it's thin, but it's made for idiots like me that it's very durable. So you could, under the right conditions, drop this glass and it won't shatter. Nice. And it's water filtered through our Berkey water filter. So once again,
it's everywhere.
High quality H2O, our experience with the Waterboy has changed us forever.
You can do it.
Do you guys remember being in Iowa when we watched when we went into the movie theater to watch the movie, and it was like totally packed with college kids, and it was freezing out, and it was like the run up to that was, I'm sure you all got the questions, but it was just like, so like, does it mean you guys are gonna like go to the premiere? And it was just like, your song's a Waterboy, and I was like, I don't know, are we gonna get invited to the premiere? And it's like, no.
The premiere in Iowa.
Free tickets. You're gonna pay to go see a movie that your song's in a theater in a mall in Iowa that's totally packed.
Yep. We rolled up in the tour bus, parked in the parking lot, and all walked up in there and watched the movie with our song in it, completely incognito.
Do you guys remember that lady fell asleep on me?
Yeah, dude, I remember that.
In the movie?
Yes, we had 2 rows, and I think that Ryan was sitting next to me, and I don't know if Nate was in front of me, but there was an old lady to my right who's 70, 80, something like that, and then her daughter, who was an adult, was sitting next to her, and it was a few minutes into the movie, and I heard this, "Mom, mom, don't fall asleep. Hey, mom, wake up. You're watching a movie." And she's like, "Oh, okay, cool, cool." And then eventually I just felt this like head on my shoulder,
Mm.
and she was on my shoulder, and I hear this, hey, mom, you're asleep on that man's shoulder. Hey, mom, can you wake up and watch the movie?" So she would get up, and then her head, and she ended up like sleeping with her head on my shoulder for like half the movie with her daughter going, mom, you're sleeping on that man's shoulder. And I was just like,
Dude.
what a weird
Perfect.
experience. This is our
Perfect.
Yeah,
big
totally
break.
perfect. Totally perfect.
Amazing.
It's appropriate.
Yeah, it
Right?
is.
It sums up a lot of things.
Yep.
Yeah, Nate, I think this last podcast, like part of the spirit of these conversations is to like celebrate what actually happened on the road, which was these conversations, right? Around random things that were just like, did that just happen?
Yeah, man. And I've forgotten more than I can remember. And like when you bring things like that up, it's like, oh wow, yes, I do remember that. It's great. Oh boy.
That's a decent segue into our first
Segue.
question.
First question.
So these questions were sent to us by podcast listener Justin Lauder, who is here in Richmond. He is a lawyer and has a wonderful practice working with startups and doing some cool stuff. He's also a musician. He's got a band called Silly Bus and an all-around good dude. And he helped everything as we were kind of getting set back up into the new millennium with our business stuffs. So thank you, Justin. And he says, "I've heard about you all living on the estate in Sperryville. Is that correct? How did space/living conditions impact the band's creative process? More broadly, how did the band originating at JMU impact the sound, opportunities, etc.?" So a two-part question. Um, Coming out of JMU, as we were kind of talking about our first experiences there, recording, et cetera, how did that impact our creative process? And then, being on the farm, living in the same house together, how did that impact everything? So
Greg, take it away, brother.
Man, I was going to say, Nate, take it away, bro.
beat you to it.
All right. Well, I will. I'll tell you that, we didn't think about those kinds of things. We just went for it. This is my perspective. Okay. You guys can obviously have totally different slants on it, but it was all or nothing. We lived together. We were on the road together. We came back home. We got tired of each other together. And then we saw each other in the kitchen at 2 a.m, making a sandwich or whatever. And the whole time you would be hearing little snippets of somebody working on something. You walk by Dave's room and you hear, he's working out something, or you go by, Steve and Craig's room and they're working on something, or, they're in the living room together, like, hey, check this out, and I'd be in my room listening to whatever, trying to work out some things. And it was just like a melting pot of simultaneous learning and growing and practicing all the time. So, that's like, I don't think that I actually sat back and said, well, I think that this is going to improve our, it was just like, we're all in,
Yeah, instead of melting pot, I would call it a crucible, because it was just like high heat, high pressure, just being on top of everybody's business. But it's the best way, like you said, it's the best way you're always in the flow of what's going on. And, whenever we wanted to practice, it was always there. And there were times where we would schedule a practice, but there were also times where couple people would be down in the practice room working something out, and I'd come down and pick up my guitar and start, you know, jumping in, and
Oh yeah.
we always had that ability to jump into the creative and the, you know, just working stuff out, which is, you know, like the best way to do it. And interpersonally, it was either like sink or swim, you know, like it was either work together or not, you know, and there were times where it was the vibe in the house was a little, you know, icy, but like that was few and far between as far as I was concerned. Like
Yeah.
most of the time, you know, we worked stuff out because we had to, you know, and it was I mean, those were the golden years, you know, like living at the farm, that the farm parties we had, just the being out in 7,500 acres of the most beautiful Virginia countryside. I mean, that was it was amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting, Nate, that you say like we didn't think about it. It was all about the adventure, right? So we were finishing up JMU. It was getting to the stage where, you know, in the summers we were full-time musicians, and we got Randy Reed on board. So he graduated 2 years ahead of us at JMU, and we asked him to be our manager. And his first task as the manager of the band was the unenviable task of figuring out where 7 band dudes could live together, right? It was like, we're out of school, we're gonna live together, man, you know. And it was just like, where is that, right? And we were looking at, man, we looked at a place in like Stafford County, and
Right.
it was just like, you know, people were just like, we couldn't afford it, or they're like, you know, you put a rental application in, and they're just like, wait, huh?
Right.
Who? 7 22-year-olds in a band? That'll be a veto. And it was like we were running out of time, and he was like, oh, hey, I remember that John, was it John Miles, was like, he's like, yeah, he's living in this like farm with like 1,000 acres of land out near Little Washington, Virginia. And it was just like, I don't know where that is, and I don't understand that number of like, doesn't that amount of acreage just doesn't make any sense. And
Right.
we went out and saw this house, and it was like gorgeous, and it was just like $750 a month for like a 1920s giant ranch,
13
multi-story,
bedroom. Yeah.
13 bedroom, like craziness. And it was just like, it was like last minute, and it happened. And I remembered when we all went out and got into the Jeeps and the ATVs and went out and toured the land. And I just remember being like, I'm from the suburbs. I have no basis to understand what driving a mile out into countryside that is owned by a family that is just farmland, like
Yeah.
being a mile from anything with cows, and it felt like you're just out in like the Serengeti, you know. And it was just like, where are we? What is going on? And then it was interesting because then there was that feeling of like, oh my goodness, we're totally pulling something off right now. Like while our peers are like, I gotta have a career, we're like, watch this space, like whatever this is, let's do that. And it was that spirit where it wasn't planned. It was just like, we're just all in, and whatever comes our way, we're just going to take a huge bite of it. And like sometimes it was like the right thing to take a bite of, and sometimes it was just like, well, you just gotta learned a lesson there. So
Yeah. And
um,
also, I mean, it wasn't like we were there a whole bunch anyway.
Right.
You
yeah,
know, there might have been, during the course of a whole year, there might have been, you know, a week at a time where we'd be at home for a stretch,
Right.
maybe another week somewhere. But I mean, we were gone
Yep.
and on the road all the time. So when we did finally get a chance to get off the road, even though, you know, we all lived together, we had all that land and all that space and quiet. I mean, I would just go out walking, you know, all day and be
Yeah.
gone.
Same.
So, you know,
Totally. I would grab my camera and I would just go out and just be out in like by myself in nature for like hours, and then come back and be like, okay, decompressed, good to go.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
Nate, you had that barn you would rehearse in. Do you remember the doing congas up in the barn, and there was that barn owl that would hang out with you?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Getting like learning how to play kungas and stuff and just
Mm.
throwing everything into it. Like that style of music still just blows me away. Hey buddy. If my
Yeah.
dog starts barking, I'm sorry.
Literal woodshedding.
Yeah, up in the barn, man, and just getting at it, going after it,
Yeah.
man, and learning. speaking of, I don't know, George Penn, if you get a chance to watch this, George just sent me a link on Facebook, and it was like all those cats doing something together. Horacio, El Negro Hernandez, Changuito, what was the other dude's name? Reyes from what's the name, from Santana, and these dudes are doing some stuff together, and it's just like, and I still to this day I listen to the Latin percussion sections, and it just sends chills down my spine. It's amazing. I also want to thank Rennie Lopez for turning me on to a lot of that stuff. Rennie's dad was in a super legit salsa band in New York City, and Rennie's just out of this world on timbales, and man, leave me alone, will you? I love this dog, but man, when he wakes up and he's like, look at me, thank you.
Rennie Lopez from the band The Authority, New
The
York
Authority.
City.
So little segue backwards. Remember when The Authority came down from New York City and they hung out at the farm, and they were just, you talk about like, the three of us were like, suburbanite kids and stuff, and we moved out to here, and it was kind of like, wow, these cats came down from New York, and they were just like, dude.
They were freaked out.
They were totally freaked out.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Steve. I'm getting all crazy.
We had stayed with them, and they lived like outside the city in somewhere Jersey, like right across the like it was city, and like you wake, like I didn't sleep very well because it was like sirens and just like stuff, and there's always like stuff going on, and it's like just crazy. And then we were like, yeah, come out to the farm, man. It's amazing. It's so peaceful. It's awesome. And they were just like, they came out and they were like all like, like leather overcoats and stuff. And they're like, what, dude, what, like, and like they were freaked out at like, are there like spiders that are going to kill us, and snakes and like bears? And we are like, yeah, there's some bears. Like they're, they won't bother you. And they're like, they were totally freaked out. And so they had the exact same experience that I had, not getting a good night's sleep because they were out in the country and they were totally freaked out. It's awesome.
Yeah, I took them on a hike over the mountain there, like whatever, the one that when you went straight out and they had the road that went over. So, I mean, it's like, a 45-minute, hour-long hike to get over there. And we were on top of the mountain, and there was a gaggle of turkeys that kind of like came storming through, and they were just jumping, and they were like, whoa, yo, what's that? And I'm like, oh, it's a turkey. He's like, oh my God, has anybody ever been killed out here? And I'm like, I don't think so. It was amazing, dude. It was an amazing experience. You're just like, those are just turkeys. You're good.
Amazing.
So great.
Yeah, great times. You talk about cutting your teeth and practicing and, learning how to play your instrument and stuff. And just spending time with that band up in New York was just invaluable. Just the most hard-hitting, just vicious players,
head cutting,
but super nice. And they could tell that we were all like in the same headspace. We're all like just on this side of like losing control, like we're just
right,
and they'd be like, yo, dude, have you ever heard of so and so? I'd be like, no, who's that? And they would just pour into us, and then likewise we would pour into them, and just a very unlikely friendship from my perspective. Those guys were hard, and we were like, hey guys. But man, woo! I still talk to Big Frank like pretty frequently, and man, Waldeck tells a great story about Big Frank. They're on tour together in Colorado, so it was The Authority and Egypt on tour, and Big Frank had broken his leg somehow, and he was on crutches and stuff, and I forget all the exact details of the story, but somehow he and Waldeck were talking, and Andy was like, yeah, man, great show, I'm sorry about your leg or something like that. And Big Frank looks over, he's like, yeah, you're pretty good, guitarist, he's like, I still kick your ass. And Andy's like, I know you will, okay, just Dude.
So great. I asked Frank, I was like, dude, because I remember we were talking about playing because he was one of my most favorite guitar players because he had all the chops and all the like learning and all the complexity, but he liked the raw stuff, right? Where it was just like gnarly. And I remember talking to him about like rehearsing, and he was like, "Bro, I don't like to practice. I like to work out." And I was just like, "Word."
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, I'll either cut your head playing guitar or I'll beat your ass. Like either one. Like you choose.
Yeah, it's funny, Nate, because we were talking a little bit about ARU a few conversations ago, and it was like that somehow our band had that like side door to these
Yeah.
relationships. It was like we were like a combination of enough talent and enough enthusiasm and a whole lot of like all inness that
Yeah,
sort
man.
of allowed people like with the authority where like they were cutting heads so hard it was just if you came at them they'd just be like and like we came to the
Yeah.
side
You
like,
got the
what
feeling that they didn't like anybody.
Right.
yeah
And then somehow we're like friends with them. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Same with ARU. I think that they could just tell, like you said, we were just like kids in a candy shop when we got to see them play,
yeah
and they were like kind enough to us and, talk about music and, just talking to them about anything was like going to school. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had an interesting blend of stuff that we were kind of putting together, but I think, at the root of it, Nate Brown, since you're here, man, like mad props cuz like at the root of what we were doing was this like really like undeniable pocket and just we talked about this on the last podcast, but your commitment to um just your chops, like just like always you always had sticks in your hand and that you came with the natural ability that you have as a musician and just props, dude, but like you were also like spent just hours on hours and hours, and I think that's musicians of that level just like like see that immediately, like you just hear that in a player where you're just like, yep, that player's done his work, and I think that that was our ticket, like I think the weirdness helped and the like, like kind of the other stuff that we were throwing in the mix, but like at the core of it I think was just like that, undeniable rock of Gibraltar pocket that we had courtesy of Nate Brown.
Oh
So
man, that's kind. I
dude,
thank you, Steve. It's always been since that rehearsal for the first time on, was it Market Street, something like that, down in JMU, right next to
yeah,
the prison.
yeah,
Just a connection. You know, you hear cats all the time that they're just out of this world good, but there's something kind of sterile or something that kind of drives you away, whether it's their ego or their unwillingness to want to make music with other people,
yeah,
and I don't think that we ever had that. We've always pushed each other and, encouraged each other, and also just been like, yo, man, it's time to pick it up a little bit or whatever. Have you practiced? What are we practicing this week, or what are you working on? Are you listening to the shows? You remember that time? And we went through an era where we would record everything we did and listen to it for like 2 or 3 years straight, like all the
yeah,
shows that we did, like afterwards.
all of them.
Yeah. And just listen back and just be like, wow, man, I really thought that was awesome, but that was not awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That was sounding like pretty regional battle of the band stuff right there. Like just less. I don't need to play that, especially drumming wise. We got 6 guys on stage playing all the time.
Right.
Why don't you, like Craig, remember that when like it was like a light bulb went off and we were like, hey, why don't you just save that one for the next one? Just
Yeah.
cut that part out.
yeah
Kenny Mims.
Yeah, just we
the
don't need
Nashville
that.
music. Hey bub, did you
You
save
mean,
that one for the next song?
yeah, you mean I don't have to play all the time? Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But
That
thanks,
and
man, Steve. That's kind, because I remember, like I said, that first night I was like, I'm vibing with these dudes. You
yep.
know, it was a connection, and still to this day,
Word.
even after the dormant stages of just doing different things and not really connecting as everything, here we are in 2021 getting ready to play the Festi, and there's still this energy between the three of us. And then we got Hammer on bass. We're going to have some amazing players coming in, but that chemistry is still undeniable.
Yep.
You know,
For sure.
and it's exciting to me. So
Word.
boom, right back at you.
You guys remember the wiffle ball field?
Oh,
Yeah.
is this a question
It is
from
now.
Justin? No, I
This
don't
is
know.
part of
It's part of the farm, yeah. The
Right.
the wiffle ball field and then the farm parties too, like that you know, to cap off the whole thing.
Oh, I got a question.
Oh yeah.
Craig, is that part of Ladybug? Did somebody smack you with the wiffle ball bat?
Yeah, right.
yeah, that
It's
was
also
those
in the
wiffle
Hooch
ball.
video.
Cohagen Field. Remember, we watched Total Recall so many times that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
named the wiffle ball field. So, you know, for any of the listeners out there, the front door of this old manor house went down into a field, but they essentially put a giant hedgerow of, I don't know what kind of bushes they were, but they were probably like 15 feet tall.
Yeah.
And the way the walkway went out and then the sidewalk, it made a perfect like right angle. And then the hedgerow made a perfect outfield fence, and it was like a perfect wiffle ball size. And so we would play these epic wiffle ball games, and we named it Cohagen Field after the villain in Total Recall, because we watched Total Recall on the bus so many times on VHS.
Yep.
VHS. But somebody slapped you like a crack of a plastic bat.
That's where it comes from, Nate.
From
right.
a simple, silly game Craig used to play. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Right on.
So that's awesome. So I think
I've-
that Jason probably got some nuggets of wisdom there, or information.
Careful what you ask.
Right?
Right.
Are you ready for question 2?
Go.
Okay. Question 2. What is your songwriting process? You've touched on this some, but do you write collectively in groups? Does someone bring the song, then the group arranges? Historically and now, in particular, the writing on In the Juju Underworld seems to have taken a different direction approach. So a lot there, a multifaceted question. Who wants to start?
I'll go. All right. So I'll take the first little nugget.
Okay.
It's not set in stone. I think that, you know, if you're in a band, you can relate to this, and that, you know, it's always changing. You might have the whole thing in your head and be like, no, you play this, you play that, check it out, listen, it's going to be great, which rarely happens. But usually I would say that somebody has a little nugget and you say, what do you think about this? And then you're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. What would happen if you doubled it, you know, or whatever? What would you know, put some keys on there, Steve, or whatever. And it just kind of grows from there. That's the short answer.
Play the money string. Hey man, play the money string.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll build on that. And Craig, obviously, as the principal songwriter of everything, you get to wrap this one in a bow. But there were times where Craig would come with, like, you know, you've worked it out on your acoustic guitar and you've got pretty much like the form and stuff. And then once we put it into the practice room, you know, in the band house, then that was where, you know, maybe the groove got developed more, or like some of the horn parts, or, you know, some of the bells and whistles, and a lot of the time that was where the weird stuff got put in too, like, hey, let's put like a couple of measures of 7/8 there in between the verse and the chorus, you know, and some of the illitude of like, it's funny listening back to some of the stuff where like it was like, it started off as like, this is meat and potatoes, and then somebody was like throwing in rutabagas and stuff, and it was just like stone soup. But
some pop rocks.
but then there were some songs that also just kind of like were born in a jam, or, you know, like Nate was saying, from a bass line or from whatever, and it just like kind of like grew out of that seed, which was really cool. But I think one of the interesting things, and one of my favorite things about both you guys, is that it has always been super collective and super kind of like the battleground of ideas, where it's like, okay, like less ego and more just like, hey, what works here? and whatever works wins. So that's it's been like, especially as like, I don't feel like I'm like a songwriter like you guys are. Like you guys write songs, you write lyrics and melodies, and like the, you know, the sort of, I'm more like an arranger and a composer and a producer, but less of a songwriter. But that,
Side note, see Juju Underworld for later.
right. So like maybe, and we can talk about that too, but that, but what I've really enjoyed doing is like taking that structure that one of you guys would bring, and then like sort of like augmenting and kind of playing around with that. Take it away, Craig.
It changed over time
Yeah.
Yeah.
because we had six talented, dynamic people in the band. I've been writing since I was like 12. So what, you know, as it started, like I came in as a songwriter, so that's kind of how it started. But then it was like, you know, everybody had an idea or a song, and you know, Nate, you know, if we listen to play, like if you listen to the most fully formed song and idea was I'm Alive, right? Because you had the form, the groove, the lyrics right under your fingertips. So it was like kind of like this is a thing, right? And then over time, it was just like we started to learn to sort of follow each different player's lead. And then honestly, that's part of why, you know, every few years, you know, somebody would come see the band after not seeing us for 2 years, and they would be like, "Is it the same band?" Like, "Oh yeah, cool. There's this part. There it is. All right, got it."
Yeah.
Because you know, you had three guitars, and what happened to all those horns? You know, and that, you know, was part of the beauty of it all. It made it harder to bottle, right? Because we were more of a creative, innovative machine than we were necessarily a replication machine, right? And so yeah, I think it was interesting to pass the baton around, and you know, to the whole Juju Underworld thing. You know, that was a whole end of a process where we'd been on the road, we'd had a hit song, we'd gone through some lineup changes. Like I personally was pretty burnt out from the whole situation, so I just the stuff that I knew about writing, I just had kind of like, you know, was over it. So that was just a, hey, all right, let's just get it together and throw some stuff. And Steve was like putting all these sounds together on it. So, you know, the writing is also reflective of place in life, right?
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
the,
I was thinking about that the other day, man, about how Steve took those sessions. There were like maybe a handful of sessions where, you know, Slankard would come in and we would play something together, or, you know, Craig would come in and do something, and then I'd come in, and we weren't always in the same room together, kind of thing. And yeah, we were all really fried. I remember just being really like emotionally and physically like, bleh, you know. And but Steve took the the best parts of all those sessions and put his symphonic and arranging prowess to work, and really just did a knockout job on all that stuff. And I can listen back to that album. I have to listen when I'm in the right headspace, because it's a very, no, seriously, man, it's a
yeah, yeah,
very
it's dense.
heady,
Yeah.
dark experience. You know, it's not like putting on you know, Play or
Mm-mm.
even Labrador. And Labrador was kind of a, you know, kind of a heady thing too.
Right.
But song wise, you know, 12 minutes of journey. Um, and it's just a really cool album, you know, and I think that you did a fantastic job
Thanks, Nate.
with that. Yeah, man.
The
So
that was the, I think in reaction to, you know, sort of having been through the machine, you know, like we really, you know, in our journey as a band, we went from just playing like really intense live shows, and you know, there was always songwriting and the albums that recorded, you know, that we did, and that whole process. But at some point we kind of focused in and said, okay, like here's the path. Like you have to get signed. There's the gatekeepers of MTV and the radio stations. That's the only way that you can like really kind of reach a a mass audience, and so you have to dial it in. And so we did. We dialed it in, and we made Supernatural with Jim Ebert, and like we did that, you know, and the songwriting turned into like, okay, there are these rules around the songs, you know, like if it's a pop song, it can't be long, it can't be, you know, it needs to do these things. And we really like, we honed in on that, and like out of that came, you know, Supernatural and a hit song and all that stuff. And then, you know, what came after that was this amazing journey, like this sort of roller coaster ride of, you know, playing these shows for tens of thousands of people, and Dave Matthews opening up for, you know, like all of that stuff. And then the record label mergers and acquisitions started happening, and London Records bought out Sire Records, and like everybody working our record disappeared overnight. And suddenly we like, that was the end of it. That was the end of the ride for us. And having been on that journey and sort of doing that with our creativity and like kind of focusing it into that, like into the machine, I think Juju Underworld is just a reaction to all of that, where it's just like, okay, like for better or for worse, that's done. And you know, the creativity and at least for where I was coming from, it was just like, all right, well, I'm really turned on by Radiohead, or I'm really turned on by, like, you know, some other stuff that's going on sonically that like isn't about, you know, pop radio play. It's about, you know, just expressing something, and
Yeah.
that to be able to explore that. And yeah, what the process was, just we recorded, you know, somebody would start with an idea, a beat or a bass line or a guitar thing, and we would press record and capture that as it happened. And then from there, they became the swaths of fabric that we built those songs on. So like completely different songwriting process.
Yep.
Seven and
Craig,
a
we
half.
lost your audio. Oh, there you are.
Oh, boom. 7.5 minute song, which was actually an edit down from like a 20-minute thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Like a 20-minute jam cut down to like the best little parts of that, and then like, yeah, augmented and orchestralized.
Yeah, you know, one of the things too, back to the writing part and where this evolved, I think one of the things that I learned along the way was like how to stalk writing, right?
Mm.
How to take it from like a different vantage point, right? Oh, we're starting here and then it can go here. And one of the things that Slankard quietly brought to the table were these bass lines, right? And at first I was just like, I don't even know what to do with that, right? It's a bass line, right? And then it was just like you started to hear these, Ladybug. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No worries. And I was just about to do Ladybug, which if we had done them at the same time would be very Charles
Do it.
I. Steve.
Put them together like that.
Yeah. And so yeah, and like just writing over those bass lines where things completely changed. And I found a real home in that, honestly, because one thing that Dave brought was just that consistency, right? He liked, while all this insanity was going on, around him, he just would be like, look, let's keep it together here. Let's make it neat.
That's like the best quality of a bass player is just like to stick with that.
Yes.
Right?
God, I love Slank.
Dude. Dave Slankard.
You remember when we just be getting crazy? He'd be like, man, he just gets so, he's like, man, just simplify it, man. Come on. And he'd be like, no, Dave, like, we got to put the Six Flags section in here, man. We need a roller coaster in these 8 measures here, bro.
So an interesting follow-up to that is we just wrote a couple songs. And in particular, we wrote one song like start to finish that we should talk about our songwriting process 2021.
All right.
Did
It's
start to finish?
from
What?
my
Well, not finish,
perspective,
finish. Go
it
ahead.
was like, we're sitting in Steve's living room, and Craig's like, um, you know, plays a little ditty and sings a little ditty, a little 4-bar. And I'm like, ooh. And I have this, silly little Roland SPD SX, and I started doing the and then here comes Steve. And next thing you know, it's like, wow, we got ourselves a song, boys. And it was like, we all knew it. We were like, this is good. So, back up. What are you doing? What are you singing about? And I started saying something, and Craig was like, yeah, keep singing, and had the little phone up in there. It was like, do this, just sing it, let's record it. And it was exciting. We're writing music in person after, this crazy pandemic, man, and just being in the same room together was thrilling, and being able to capture that energy, which I really think this song does. It captures an energy, and I can't wait to record it and get it out to the people. Straight up.
Word. Yeah. What's the it's quite topical. What's the lyric? What's the hook?
Gonna lay low till this thing blows over.
Right?
And honestly, it was like we were all sitting together having a hang like this. And once again, that's one of my most favorite things is the hang, right? And then the music comes out of the hang, and we were all sharing ideas, and coming back together after playing music and living and like having lives and like still developing that talent, right? That's the thing that I'm most fascinated with, is that like we've stayed on the path. Like even if it's gotten weird or it's gotten hard or whatever, but we've stayed on the path. We've come back together, and it's just sharing pieces, right? And that's, for me, is like now just pieces that we all bring in that we can all add to, where it's just like, we've all grown up a bunch. So it's like, let's just have fun together. And for me, it's like, it's kind of stress relief, right? And that was just a piece, a little hook, that almost a throwaway that I'd recorded at the gazebo. And I was like, I think I had this little thing, and I played it, and it was like, oh, that's a thing. And then Nate, you kind of ran with it, and I was like, well, that's relieving for me, right? Like there it is, like there, it just
Yeah,
happened.
man.
So
I was gonna say, yeah, you play to each other's strengths after you know each other for so many years. What the other person's strengths are, and you trust it. You let a lot of things go and be like, well, lyrically, I'm gonna hand this over, or chord wise, structure and all that stuff. I don't care, but I know that he's good at that. He's good at that. I'm good at this. And 20 minutes later, we got this song. Well, it was more like a couple hours, but still.
Yeah, and I think somebody said it earlier, but like the pass the baton idea, which I think that's the biggest difference for me, 20 something years later, is that we all have the patience and the sort of the wisdom of all the stuff we've been through, all the scar tissue and all that, all that we have now as who we are now. And it's back then it was like, oh man, my idea is so good, it's got to get into the song. And now it's like, you know what, like the song is going to dictate that, and all of us are in this same room here as contributors to that thing. And I think it's for me, it just feels like that natural process of just like that thing, like we're all sensitive to that thing being built, and that thing is the song, and that's going to dictate. And each of us now has the trust and the skill set or whatever that is to like be able to like let that happen, and um it's much less about like, oh, this idea, or it's just like it just kind of like materializes as we like kind of conjure it up together.
Yeah, it's like, you have an idea, and that's not really going to contribute to what's going on right now, so put it aside. What are we
Yeah.
working on,
Yeah. But it felt really natural, like that, to be, whenever that was, a couple months ago, to be in the same room together, first of all, felt amazing, but also felt like just like like the easiest thing in the world. Like, like songwriting used to be a little bit more like tense and like, like kind of like there was this like anxiety around like, oh, I gotta check this riff out, like that there was a little bit more of that energy
Uh,
that just isn't there anymore, where it's just like just
are my ideas any good?
validate me, somebody,
Oh
please.
gosh.
Love it. Pretty good
Oh,
songwriting, boys.
right,
Yeah, man.
right.
One more question, Steve. What do you got, buddy?
Do you have favorite cities to play? Is his last question, which is an interesting because it's like, it's in the present tense, and like, have we played any cities? I'll tell you my favorite city to play, Charlottesville. I can't wait. I'm so excited. June 5th. I just talked with Doug Wanamaker, who's going to be on keys. I'm going to give him a social media shout out as well. Doug Wanamaker from Indecision,
Dougie
who was
Fresh.
like mad props to Indecision, who was like the best hippie jam band in Virginia, if not the Mid Atlantic. Like they killed that stuff. I remember seeing them at like Greek Fest at Hampton, Sydney, and it was like 1,000 people around wherever they were playing, and it was just like a scene, and it was like, okay, those guys figured something out. And Wanamaker, both on any kind of like piano Fender Rhodes kind of thing or Hammond organ, like killing, just amazing. Like that guy is there are people that play the Hammond organ where that's the instrument, and everything that they're doing with the Leslie and the volume swells and the stops and all of that stuff are like, that's their instrument. He's one of those people. And so I talked to him this week, getting him up to speed on the songs that we're doing, and just so excited to like get him up in the mix. So yeah, that's my shout out, Doug Wanamaker.
Dude, you just totally turned a question into a opportunity to
Plug.
promote our show, Steve. I'm really impressed with that.
Thanks.
Nate, what are some of your favorite places that we have played, because we haven't really been on tour, but places that you remember?
In the
Oh
before
man,
times.
I was thinking about that last week because I saw these questions, and it got me tripping on when we were doing those radio shows. Do you guys remember that band, The Flies?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And what was that song? Let me see if I can. Got you where I want to. And they had some chick bass player, I think, right? And they were like surfer heavy rock. It was like one of those radio shows in Cali. And I just remember it as this moment, right? You just remember these moments in time, and the sun was going down. There's a sea of people out there, and there's this big like dust kicking up, and it was like a
It's
scene,
always
and
dusty.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
gross. It was kind of gross. And and I remember them playing that song, and I was standing on side stage and just looking out and just being like, wow, this is wonderful. What a great song. What a great night. Everything was just picturesque. And I was so I went and I downloaded a bunch of The Flies. So I've been cranking them out for the last week.
Wow.
Not
Nate,
that
if I
that's one, not that I can remember where that was, but you can't deny the Bayou. I mean, that was my favorite place to play, in Georgetown, DC, whatever you want to call it. I felt like that was the place, and the calendar year kind of swung around that. When we go back
Yeah,
to the
right.
Bayou and we sell out 2 or 3 nights at the Bayou, all of our best friends are going to be there. It's just going to be a sweat fest. It's going to be, an amazing time. And I mean, um, I can't think of a better time than at the Bayou. Yeah.
Word.
I would say, Nathan, that those California shows were either in Modesto or Sacramento.
Right on.
That's the Central Valley of California, so it's going to be hot and dusty out there. And those radio stations were all about the Central California, right? Like we didn't quite pop off in LA and San Francisco, but we hit in the Central Valley.
No, I
With
remember some
everything.
doomsday shows up in Northern Cali and lower Washington, like in Seattle too. We went over like turd in a punch bowl up there, man. I remember that.
Funny stuff. Steve-O, favorite cities, bro.
Besides Charlottesville?
I mean,
How about you,
Besides
Craig?
June 5th?
Remember that time in
Telluride.
Chicago?
Telluride, Colorado.
Telluride. Oh,
Yeah.
golly.
Because the city, like because the place, I mean, it's not even a city, it's a town, because the location was just so amazing, you know, like up in the mountains and the snowboarding and the culture and like Telluride was this little like mini like Woodstock or like Charlottesville or just a really like everybody in there. It's like, you know, really good food and just handcrafted stuff and just like all of that culture and the shows that we had there were. I remember the first time, and it goes back to living on the farm out in Rappahannock County, that there was this culture out there of like kind of like hippies and just there's this like when you start like playing music and there's whatever that is where people are like, oh, okay, and hippies are just tuned into that, like that whatever that is. I'm not really like describing it very well, I think, right now, but like that sort of that kind, whatever that is, like when you start playing music and those people are just like, oh, okay, like, you know, okay. And Telluride was so like the first time we played there at what was it, Joshua's, was that the name of the place?
Fly Me to the Moon.
Oh, Fly Me
yeah,
to the Moon. Yeah. And it was just that like there weren't a lot of people there, but it was just like those people were just like, okay, you know, like a little more of that, please. And it was just that vibe. And I had every time we came back, had such great experiences with all of it. That and there was one time where we had our shuttle bus and we had to leave it on overnight because we didn't have a place to stay. So like we were or either that or like it wasn't going to start in the morning or something. And it was producing so much smoke that like the sheriff came by and was like, dude, like, what are you guys doing? You're like polluting our town. There was that. But there was another time where I had food poisoning from somewhere. And there was a friend of ours that lived there who was just like, oh, I got you. And she took me to this restaurant and like I had this like miso ginger soup and it was just like cured me. But that just that whole thing, I think we had like some epic experiences, snowboarding, hiking. Craig almost died and Pete saved him by grabbing him and like pulling him up off this lip of a cliff. And like, I mean, Telluride, just, yeah, Telluride.
yeah,
How about
dude.
you, Craig?
Well, Telluride is, you know, and it's like adventure towns, right? Towns that
Yeah.
were wild,
Yeah.
towns that were like off the beaten path, but they had vibe to them. And if you could get over there, then you were doing something authentic. I think that was like, you know, I think that's probably a thread that you're talking about, Steve.
Totally.
I mean, you know, Nate, I'm with you. Like DC, I was born in DC. Like, you know, that's just a home where we would just tee it up so hard and it would just be like out of control. But I mean, there's so many places that when I got off the road, I actually didn't know where I was supposed to be because I knew so many places and I felt kinship with so many different places. I was confused as to where I should be to call home. And it
Right.
took me a long time to figure that out. I would be like, oh, like, where do you want to live? Like, well, I could name about 12 places that I
Yeah.
feel at home in because
Word.
I specifically made a real connection there, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
Um, God, like, you know, trying to figure like in terms of like some stories around there. I mean, Telluride was always a big one. Steamboat was another one. Like Crested Butte. I loved Crested Butte because it was like, I mean, that's where like a lot of the lyrics from Hooch came in, right? Because it was this town where it was just like even more out in the middle of nowhere, and it was just like even less developed and even more snow, and like you had to drive over some crazy pass where it looked like, you know what, you make a wrong move and you're just going to go off the edge of a cliff, and there's 40 foot of vehicle and you're just going to be dead, like, right, like the element of danger, right? um
Yes.
Boulder was an amazing place. I loved Boulder a lot. I always loved playing in New York City because it felt like
Oh yeah.
being in the city and trying to make it there. Do it, Nate.
Hey man, I saw an engineer the other night. I was hanging out with Joe and Dane Alderson, bass player extraordinaire. We were doing a session, and it was at the Haunted Hollow. And the engineer is a new engineer, and he just wanted to get sound. So we went in there, we recorded some stuff, so he could like familiarize himself with the board. The sound engineer dude used to work at the Fox. He was like, I remember you guys, man. I worked those shows when you were on tour with Dave
Wow.
Matthews, and you know, the whole sellout thing and their first song. And
Yep.
I was like, wow, small world. How about that?
Yeah.
So,
Athens, Georgia, because of
yes.
REM. And like just you felt like, look, we want to do well here because they represent something in the American music scene.
Yeah.
New Orleans, right? I mean,
Ooh,
how
yes.
that for us? Like, we were a vessel, and every time we would plug into anything New Orleans, it was just like, here, please put more of that in here.
Yeah, New Orleans was like Mecca. Like that was like for several years, it was like no matter what else we do, we're going to end up in New Orleans at Mardi Gras, and like that's just the church, you know, like that's just it.
Dude.
Mm.
Burlington, Vermont. Remember
Oh,
Burlington, Vermont? That was a great hang. Some of the
Yeah.
parades we would do up there.
Dude.
And then we met the Overtones up in Maine.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
We saw
Portland,
them. No, we
Maine.
saw
Yeah.
them. Where did we? I think the first time we saw them was at the festival down in Virginia Beach, and they were down playing a festival down there, I think. And oh man, what a fantastic band! Tony
Right?
McNabb was
Rustic, Overtones.
yeah, that's like a God. Remember we opened for them at some theater in Portland, and it was like the
Yeah.
entire town came out.
State
Yeah.
Theater.
Yeah, 1,500 people or
Yep.
1,700, totally sold out. Like the local news station was there, and it was such a beautiful way. And it's so interesting because to talk about like favorite cities, a lot of times it's about the experience in that city, right? And so going to Portland and being part of their family up there and being in that city, having that experience, it's just like that whole town just opens up where you're like,
Mm.
oh,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm part of the fabric of what's happening here. And I think that that's like some of the identifying elements of like what kind of would stand out, right? There would be location, how beautiful is it, and like what's that communal experience that you could have.
Right.
Yeah. 100%. And that night after the show in the green room, Tony McNabb and Nate Brown went head to head.
Golly.
What do you even call that? What was that? Like a
It was a sing-off.
karaoke off? A
It was a
sing-off.
sing-off. Yeah.
A sing-off. And so there was Aaron Neville. Who else was it? Did each of y'all get to so this
Journey? We both had to try to
Journey,
sing
right,
Journey,
right.
which no human being should be ever forced to do.
So both Nate Brown and Tony McNabb, the drummer of Rustic, Overtones, and Tony has gone on to do like all kinds of amazing stuff as well. Shout out. But so that night after the show, like we had been hanging out as bands and playing shows, and like both of our drummers knew that like the other one had this ability to like impersonate famous singers, right? And so it came down to this, like it came down to like, okay. And there was we were all in a circle, and we like started throwing stuff into the circle, like this is what the winner gets, right? So there was like this stuff, there was money and other things in this circle of like the prize winnings. And then you guys went head to head on like I think 3 different each of you had like 3 shots at this competition.
Yeah. Oh man, I'll never forget that.
You remember when we were on the road with Rustic Overtones and
Oh,
McNabb, Tony McNabb pulled each one of us aside. I remember he was just like, "Hey, Craig," you know, he'd be like, you know, he's got that. He's like, "Hey, Craig," got that Portland accent. He's like, "Man, come here, I got something for you." I was like, "What's up, Tony?" He's like, "Hey, man, just really love being on the road with you guys, man. And like, hey, like, don't tell the other guys this, but you're my favorite." And remember he did that in front of us. And I remember being like, "Oh, thanks, Tony. Wow, it's a little weird, but thank you." But yeah,
Tony, one time we were eating dinner. I was eating dinner with Pete, or maybe it was Steve. I can't remember who it was, but I was eating dinner with one of, you know, our band members, and we were having some food. Remember what he did? He comes in the restaurant. He's just like, and this is probably not PC for, you know, our current culture right now, but he comes in, he's just like, "Nathan, you son of a, I gave you my all. I gave you my heart, you bastard."
Like loud
in
the restaurant.
Like, "I loved you, and this is how you treat me." I'm just like, "Come on, man, come on."
And then he just walked out.
Big scene, and then he walks out, and I was just like,
Tony McNabo, a legend. I will
really
say this
is.
though. I will say this to wrap up that story though, like undisputed
pocket.
Nate Brown won the sing-off.
Oh,
crushed it.
Yeah, I won that one.
You did.
Yeah, that was great. What a great moment. What a great time. That was probably my greatest victory.
One for the ages.
Well, you know, what we should do is we should think about in the future episodes, maybe
a rematch.
We should do a rematch. That would mark that. But I think that once we get these road stories, we should just also just cut little clips out of the video and just create a little playlist on YouTube of just road stories. Because I think, you know, looking back, these are the moments, right? I mean, you had moments on stage and ambition and trying to get the trophies and the brass rings and all the monies and all that. But in reality, it's like the comedy, the moments, the hilarity, the like just random things that are just like, what is
totally
like,
the lifelong friendships, you know?
Yeah. That's stuff that happened along the way as we were, you know, trying to be a band and trying to, you know, have a hit song and doing all that stuff. But yeah, that's stuff that happened along the way. That was the stuff for sure.
Yeah. Indeed.
Word. Well, this is a good time to wrap up. That's for sure.
Nathan, can we get you on the pocket again at some point?
Say on the pocket? Oh, how about this one? Yeah, man. I'll be glad to be back on the pocket.
Yeah.
Because this is a good time.
Uh-oh.
Let's see.
You can listen to the pocket. Do it, Steve. You got to get that thing in the mic if we're gonna wrap it.
It's got to be like right here.
Yeah, it is.
Listen to the pocket.
There you go. Now we got a theme song.
I love it,
dudes.
Love you guys, man. Thanks for including me in the pocket. And yeah, we'll talk soon, right? Talk about this show coming up.
Word.
It's practically here, June 5th. Get your tickets, man. Come on, Chisholm Vineyard, Charlottesville, Festy in the house. Let's do it.
Awesome. From strength to strength.
How you like me now? All right, guys. Peace out.
Bye, guys.
Love you.
Love y'all.